Awesome. Let me just finish up this one thing I was saying with someone in comments. We were talking about Georgism. I don't know if you're, yeah. um, it, well, there's some ways I'm very sympathetic to it, but in other ways, no. But just, I think it's philosophically flawed on one point, Daniel. So I'm just going to stick this one bug in your ear. It's basically on the theory that land is a common ownership of everyone, and for you to have exclusive use of it, you need to pay a certain amount to society in general to have that right. Now, here's my question to any Georgist. What if I don't want your money? What if I would just rather have access to your land? If it's mine, you don't get to determine what proper compensation is for me. You might have great beachfront property, and I would just prefer to be able to go there. So forget even other issues. I think philosophically it's unworkable. It's like saying, I'm going to punch you in the face and pay you $100, and that's adequate compensation for punching you in the face. And I've decided that. You don't have a say in it. I've decided it. So that's my fundamental objection to Georgism. But my second objection to it is, if everyone owns the land or has an interest in it, I know own's not the right word, then why can't everyone say we don't want Nazis to own land, or we don't like your opinion? So you can use that land, but you can't use it for things that we as a society have deemed whatever. And I think that's the slippery slope of Georgism, besides the fact that I don't think land is a scarce resource to begin with. Everything is a scarce resource if you want to get technical, because, unless the universe is limitless, but we're nowhere near running out of land. And by the time we get to running out of land, we're going to be spacefaring, and spacefaring is going to make Georgism look really dumb, in my opinion, because all of a sudden it'd be, where do you want to go? But competitively bid, so there's no price. If I have a right to that land, there's no price. None. I own it just like you do. It's the tragedy of the commons in a weird way. So anyway, I am going to be doing a show on Georgism because I have some friends. And I was initially attracted to it because it seemed like a just way to fund things. But then the more I thought about it, no bueno. So I didn't reject it outright. I really spent a long time thinking about it, because for a while, this was back when I was still a minarchist too, where I really thought, oh my God, this is a way that you can have public funding without theft. But unfortunately, I don't think it works. But I understand why people find it attractive. All right. I'm so glad we worked out our technical difficulties. I was saying to everyone that, believe it or not, we did this for 2 hours already. And it was fine.
Now it's my turn.
Yeah, it happens. I was feeling much better though, because I didn't go live, which was pretty bad. So a lot of things I guess we're going to be doing. We know a lot of things we're already going to say, but there's new things already that have happened in 3 days. It's crazy. But people now get to actually watch because it's going to get recorded. So let's start again with the introductions of, I don't know if all of my friends know you. So if you could, again, say a little bit about yourself, it'd be wonderful.
Absolutely. So my name is Angela McArdle. Thanks for having me on. I am the chair of the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles County. I am also on the XCOM for the California LP. I'm the state coordinator for the Mises Caucus for California, and I ran for Congress twice and do a bunch of liberty activism in the People's Republic of Los Angeles County.
Well, it's turning into the People's Republic of America.
Yeah.
So what initially had drawn us to decide, we wanted to do something, was you were talking about organizing some protests, or at least being involved. I don't know if you were the organizer or just really involved. Organizer, awesome. And then the LP of Colorado was organizing some protests in Denver. So we had gotten started talking about that, but you were way on that game before I was. So, and that led into just talking about our whole opinion about the measures being taken by the government. And of course, that gets into what we think about the pandemic to begin with. And I think from what I learned last time, you do have somewhat of a medical background.
I do. So I currently work as a paralegal doing mostly real property litigation, but I've also got 7 years of experience as a craniosacral therapist. And I used to work as an assistant medical researcher for Dr. Pearl Grimes, who is one of the top dermatologists in the world. She was Michael Jackson's dermatologist.
All right, awesome. And we discovered at that time we're both paralegals, so that was another thing in common. And also, you're in the position of you would be classified by the government as being in a vulnerable population.
Yeah, I have Crohn's disease. I take immunocompromising drugs every 4 weeks. It's a pretty hardcore injection, and I am on and off of steroids. Every
You're all bulked up.
Look at these guys.
Look at these guys. That's pretty much me too. Oh my goodness. And as I explained before, I don't have like a technical medical background whatsoever, but I'm also of the opinion, not that you could learn really technical things on your own, but you can get a good background on some things if you're really interested in study on your own. Back when I was running a theology debate forum, most of the pastors I dealt with thought I went to seminary, but I didn't. I just studied on my own. Now, medicine obviously is much more complicated, but I had been studying viruses since high school. I got fascinated with, there was a virus called equine infectious anemia because I showed horses. And I don't know if do we have horses in common too? I will just die.
I don't have horses.
Okay.
We are horse trainers.
Yeah, I don't now, but I grew up with that. And there's a yearly test horses have to get called the Coggins test, and it's for feline infectious anemia. And if they have it, they have to be put down. So it's like a big deal. So I just started looking into it because it like terrified me. And it's a retrovirus, and I learned all of that. So when AIDS came out and it was a retrovirus, I already knew a great deal. And then I discovered the 1918 pandemic and dove into that. So while I'm certainly don't have a formal medical background, I do have a lay interest. So I think I do know more than your average lay person, but obviously nowhere near, a medical level. But I'm not like, I didn't first hear about coronaviruses and retroviruses yesterday, like everyone complaining about why Gary Johnson didn't know Aleppo, and they didn't know where Aleppo was either until the day before. So, this isn't a completely new topic for me. So we know a little bit of what we're talking about.
Everyone's an expert and no one's an expert.
Right. Well, yeah. And that's a whole other thing. Now it's the religion of the experts. You must not question.
Right. Bow down to the white lab coat.
It is crazy. And, let us not forget that, experts once thought that all female problems were because of, your uterus. Really, they're not infallible. You should be able to question anybody and anything,
Oh, yeah.
while always trying to keep in mind that Dunning-Kruger is a thing to make sure you're not you're not engaging in that. But to say that you cannot question experts is just,
it's wrong.
It's wrong.
I can tell you interesting stories about some of the very high quality medical research that I did and was instructed to tamper with while working for Dr. Grimes.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just, and any expert that would say you shouldn't question them is mental.
Absolutely.
Anyone who thinks they can't be questioned. So we've got lay people running around saying you can't question the experts, and any expert worth his salt would never claim that for themselves. They're not the frickin' Pope. They're not speaking ex cathedra.
Right. I don't really understand, especially in the liberty movement, why we have so many people absolutely prostrating themselves to epidemiologists who work for the government and do the government's bidding. Sure, they're scientists, they have training, they have studying, under their belt, and they've been doing it for 20 years, but they answer to Orange Man Bad. So just keep in mind, you should just have an open mind and don't knee-jerk react to anyone who says, I don't know if I buy that.
Right. And even in fields of expertise, the only one I would say this probably doesn't apply to is quantum physics, because that is freaking some acid trip Alice in Wonderland shit. But in most things, you can still apply basic logic.
Mhm.
You know, even if you don't know some of the technical specifics, you can still apply basic logic to come to some kind of conclusions. So to start first, though, I think to give a background, because I think the last time gave me some idea on how to better organize the discussion, is there is there's some wide extremes now in the liberty movement, and there's some people who are so on one side, like they say this whole thing's fake, like there isn't really a virus, or I don't even know what they're saying yet. It's like so scattergun. We're not that. I mean, I think you and I are pretty much on the same page as to, yeah, this is serious. The flu is serious.
Yeah, it's a virus that hurts people. It makes you sick.
Right.
It doesn't make everyone as sick as everyone else, and some people are asymptomatic. But yeah, it's killed some people. I don't think that's a myth or a 5G conspiracy,
Right.
or, because the flat earth and birds aren't real. So if you microwave coronavirus 3 times, Nancy Pelosi pops out from under your bed. I don't think that that's should be part of a rational discussion. But you could still, wonder, gee, should we be having this reaction to the frickin' virus?
Right. So it's serious. The flu is no laughing matter. Like we were discussing last time, I find it somewhat ironic because, again, I have like a flu like obsession. I find it ironic that people right now are freaking out so bad, who are totally ignorant that 80,000 people died of the flu last year.
Right.
They don't know that. The average person does not know that at all. And that in a bad flu year, 120 to 150,000 die in America during those seasons. Now, I'm not saying this is just the flu. I'm not pulling that. I'm just saying large numbers of people die of things that we do not freak the fuck out over.
Right.
And those numbers are big, but let me give you a bigger number. Our population. If you do the division, it's like 0.00, maybe one more 0.01 of the population. If we said 300,000 would die.
It's still sad, but
Of course, one death is sad.
Sure, but it doesn't mean that we should all literally halt our lives, clutch our pearls like we're going to die, and halt civilization. It's just not a realistic reaction.
It's not, because life has to carry on. So you can't just hole up, because you might as well just then put a gun to your head. It's societal suicide. So there are competing interests, and it seems to me the other interests haven't been put into the equation at all.
Absolutely. I mean, I've only had the flu once in the past 15 years. I got it in 2017 on Christmas. Unfortunately, I was really, really sick. I was on immunosuppressant drugs and steroids, and I lived. And one thing that people are sort of sweeping under the rug or not paying attention to is that there are elderly people right now and people who are at risk who are catching coronavirus and recovering. And that should also be part of the narrative that, yeah, you can get sick, you can die, and you can also get better and be just fine in a few weeks, just like any other viral respiratory infection. Just different people have different reactions.
Correct. And I think part of the issue is that even if people don't die, there's a high hospitalization rate, is at least what I'm hearing. And I haven't really seen anything to counteract that. I'll take that as true. So it revealed a flaw in our healthcare system where we're not prepared. But does that justify violating the basic rights of everybody? And I think in this discussion, it comes down to utilitarians versus natural rights people, or the fancy term would be deontologists. I'm a hard deontologist. And some people will like gnash their teeth at me saying this, but the Libertarian Party is a deontological party. I know Jason Weinman out of Nevada who thinks I'm shredding all the evidence to the contrary. Just read the statement of principles. It doesn't say we believe these things because it results in the greatest good. It says we believe in these things because it's your right. It does result in great good, but that's not the reason we believe in it. And it would be an awful weird reality if doing the right thing just led to shit results. So obviously we would expect it to lead to good results. So if you're a utilitarian, then I can see you making this argument. In arguments with some utilitarians, they had basically said, like they were opposed to universal health care just because they didn't think it would work. But yeah, they'd gladly steal from everybody if it would work. At least that is utilitarianism.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I'm not that. That horrifies me, but I just like to understand the position. So if someone is holding true to big L libertarian philosophy, there is no way they can justify force against rights of peaceful people.
Right. When I go to the grocery store, I am as confident as I can be that I don't have contagious diseases. If I thought I had contagious disease, and this is all what I can do within my power, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would stay at home. If there was absolutely no way for me to avoid going out because I'm sick and I've got to get medicine, and thanks to everyone freaking out right now, you can't really order anything the same day like you used to, then I would mask up, sanitize myself, try to stay away from everyone, stand back when I'm in line. I take a little wipe. I have little wipes in my purse and wipe down the debit card machine when I'm done. From a utilitarian perspective, should I stay home and die because I couldn't go get Tylenol for my high fever? Or should I take the best, most rational approach to making sure that I don't infect someone else within my power? Because, sorry, utilitarians, you can't literally account for every single thing in the world.
And I want to acknowledge the Daniel tweet, I'm going to say your last name wrong. Daniel, you should be able to see the comments as well.
You can, yeah.
We're going to get to your questions. I'm leading up to it because those are excellent questions. I'm trying to just set a framework for other people maybe ask some things, but we are going to get to your, because you asked all the right questions. But I think they portray a fundamental misunderstanding of libertarian philosophy. And please don't be insulted when I say that. I do mean that with respect. And we could agree to disagree, but disagree agreeably. Or what's the thing I said on the platform committee? Mean what you say, but don't be mean when you say it. You know?
Yeah.
So I do, but maybe we can straighten it out and we'll have the discussion. So I didn't want you to think I ignored you. We're going to be getting to that. So I think you and I both agree that if you know that you can be, that you are in fact an actual danger to other people, that it is your responsibility to take some precautions. So it gets down to what is an actual danger. An actual danger is not a potential danger. It's you actually having something. And the way the current discussion is being framed is if you potentially can have something. Well, you want to know what? Everyone in this discussion can potentially have an aneurysm when they're driving their car down I-95. So I'm sorry, I-95 is
I figured.
East Coast. I don't even live on the East Coast anymore. I don't even have, but I'm used to Florida. But whatever your interstate is, at any moment, your biological body could do something bizarre that puts a lot of people in danger. But you don't know that. It's a potential. You're not responsible for a potential. When you're dealing with reality, you have to deal with the fact that we live in a material world with biological bodies. And our bodies are not weapons. They're not potential weapons just because something could happen. And in fact, even if you were infected with something, it's almost like when you can analogize it to when a terrorist takes a human shield. You don't blame the person who got taken hostage. And that's basically what the analogy to what a virus does to you. You're another victim. You're not an aggressor. The aggressor is the virus. Unfortunately, they're not sentient, but by you being invaded doesn't make you a bad person. But you then do have an issue, just like if you were born with some kind of disability that could cause you, like if you had epilepsy, you know, you can't be a long distance truck driver if you have epilepsy, then you do have a right to mitigate the effect on other people. But you do not have the obligation, I meant obligation, not right, to account for any potential foreseen thing. There are always viruses. And the flu, as we said, kills 80,000 people a year. If you don't know you have the flu, are you supposed to act like you have the flu at all times?
Every day of your life?
You can. And there are lots of other viruses out there. And you can't play it as just a numbers game. Well, this one is worse because more people can become infected. As libertarians, we believe in the majority of one, the individual. If even one person can be infected, they're important. It doesn't become more important because you make it more people. Libertarians simply do not believe it. That's not a libertarian point of view. So throwing the numbers at me doesn't make any difference. That's why I said before, one death is awful. And we as a society should try to prevent even one death without violating the rights of other people. Now, I'm going to draw something into this discussion. I think I did last time, but I might not have. Robert Nozick was a philosopher who was very influential in the early party. And he was a deontologist. And what he talked about is how there's an intersection between utilitarianism and deontology, meaning if you have 10 choices and none of them violate rights, you should pick out of the 10 the one that benefits the most people. That's just the ethical thing to do. But say in reality there are 50 choices, but 30 of them violate rights. It doesn't matter if those 30 might benefit more people. If they violate even one person's right, it's unethical. And he called that side constraints, that you should always aim for the greatest good possible, but you're constrained by not violating rights. And that, to me, is libertarianism in a nutshell.
Absolutely. I think it's sort of like if you were faced with the choice to steal or starve. You're
Right.
trying to do the greatest good possible. You're not trying to rob someone of their money. And it hasn't been written off that you wouldn't make reparations or pay in the future. Sometimes we're in uncomfortable positions.
Exactly. And that whole starving mother with the baby thing, that is sometimes a chestnut, but it's very easy to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone wants an answer, I don't want to go on that side trail. If anyone feels it's unanswerable, it's easy to answer. That's one of the first things I struggled with as a libertarian, came with an answer with it. Now let's get to some of Daniel's questions. Here's where we didn't get into last time, but I think fundamentally, at the bottom of this discussion, you hit upon it last time. Mm-hmm. It is, what do libertarians believe about rights? And it is negative and positive rights. Libertarians do not believe in unassumed positive rights. None.
Correct.
And in fact, that's why I'm an anarchist, because there's no positive right for anyone else to defend your rights. But that's a whole other thing. I think that's why I think the consistent libertarian position has to be that. But most people just don't sit around and gaze at their belly button the way some of us do to come up with that. You know, I just thought about it way too long. They're probably unhealthy. So I'm going to define what I think it is, and then you can, because people sometimes can explain things differently. A negative right is a right that you have inherently by virtue of being a human being, but nobody has to do anything for you to have that right. The only duty people have to you is non-aggression or non-interference. A positive right isn't really a right, but it's
a construct.
It's a construct. Requires someone to do something for you, whether they want to or not. And libertarians do not believe in positive rights. There are only negative rights. So I have a right to life, but you have no obligation to keep me alive. Your only obligation is to not actively kill me. So in that framework, the questions really do resolve easily. So for instance, how many natural rights does a dead person have, is what Daniel said. I'm going to put this up on the screen. I'm going to allow Angela, because I will monopolize. So I said, now maybe you can conceptualize it a bit differently.
Sure. I think that a dead person has zero rights because they don't have autonomy anymore. When you are conscious, when you have autonomy, you have rights. We could go really into the weeds on this and talk about people who are maybe vegetables, you can't tell, you're not sure. Generally, those things are decided in courts if they get there, and it has to do with proof and whatever, but it doesn't actually affect the philosophical positions that Karen Ann and I are setting forth, which is that you need to be an autonomous human being to demonstrate that you have rights.
And would you agree with my definition of positive and negative, or?
Really? Yeah,
Okay.
I think it sums it up pretty well.
I think what Daniel, though, is trying to get at, I think he's being sarcastic. I think what he's trying to say is, oh, your rights are all well and good, but what good is that to a person you just made dead because you're a potential carrier of a virus? I think that's what he's getting at. Now, I don't know Daniel personally, so I could be wrong. Well, so I'm going to address it as if that's what he was saying. That dead person, before they were dead, had the exact same natural rights that I do.
Yeah.
I did not violate their rights by simply living my life. I'm not an aggressor simply because I have biology. That's it.
Yeah.
Neither is that person. You have no right to a germ-free world. That's just simply not the reality that we live in. And if I do not actively know that I am an active danger, and there's even levels of that, because there are certain, I can be an active danger to somebody, but it's not a reasonable active danger. What I mean by that is, if somebody, there's an average person. What's expected of a functioning human being is to have a functioning immune system, this and that. But there are people who don't have that. That does not create a greater obligation upon me. What it recreates is a greater duty upon them to take care of their own protection. Absolutely. So that's why I said there's even levels on that.
Personal responsibility.
Personal responsibility. It's not my job to protect their life, just like it's not their job to protect mine. I just cannot do something that would reasonably, in average circumstance, to the standard of a functioning human being, kill them. I also can't, if they are taking the proper precautions, let's just use it. I like using ridiculous examples only because they really drive the point home. Say they were a person who had to live in a bubble, and they had a mobile bubble, and they're going around, and I came and took a knife and sliced their bubble open. Well, that then is me taking active things. It's going beyond beyond me just walking around and living my life. So now I'm still learning to answer Daniel's other question. He said it's too long for me to put on the screen because it would cover our faces. It seems to me that libertarian ideas have remained marginalized and will continue to remain so as long as they insist upon making the perfect the enemy of the good. Life itself is a complex wave of interactive compromises with entropy itself. That last thing was word salad as far as I'm concerned, but that first sentence I think is something we can really address.
I actually think the last sentence.
Okay, go ahead then.
Question.
Okay.
So the perfect, we can't make the perfect the enemy of the good. Life itself is a complex web of interactive compromises with entropy itself. Okay, so then then perfect isn't reality. Perfect doesn't exist. Utopia doesn't exist. And we are lying to ourselves and trying to twist and distort reality if we're trying to achieve utopia. We live in a world that has biological contaminants and, freak acts of God, nature, whatever you want to call it, that can happen to us and make us sick. So trying to argue that we need to achieve perfection is not based in reality, and it's not helpful. It's not helpful for us realistically. It's not helpful for our psyche either.
And what I think he is calling the perfect, though, is honoring rights. And I'm sorry, I make no apologies for honoring rights. And you're saying enemy of the good. If the good is violating rights, I dispute that that's good. So it's a fundamentally different presupposition. As far as, well, your ideas will be made marginalized as long as you hold them, that's just like saying the Bacon Eaters Association will never like Jewish people until they eat pork. Too bad. That's what we believe. And I do not believe they'll remain marginalized, but even if they did, that doesn't mean we're wrong. Popularity does not determine right and wrong. At one point, the idea that there should not be slavery in the world was a marginal idea. It was ridiculous to most people. Obviously, people weren't equal to them. And then there were a few people who bucked the system and caused the sea change. And I do think there can be moral evolution. And I think libertarianism is the bleeding edge of moral evolution for respecting the rights of individuals. And social revolutions are always marginal until they're not.
Absolutely.
But popularity, so what? Trump got elected.
Bad ideas are popular all the time. You know, California has got we've had some very interesting bad ideas. We're the most progressive, maybe the most progressive state in the union. We passed Prop 8 in 2008, banning gay people from getting married, setting aside whether or not, you know, the state should be involved. That was a popular idea and it passed. And, you know, yikes, a lot of people were really mad about it, but they were in the minority when the vote happened. So are they wrong? I mean,
separate but equal was popular.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even the Supreme Court upheld it, which is why when people tell me, oh, well, the Supreme Court held it, so it's right. I'm sorry. The Supreme Court has upheld a lot of shitty things.
Yeah, and they're fallible human beings. They're not perfect. Right. They're not perfect at all. You know, another thing that's interesting when you juxtapose it with the virus is in California last year, or it might have been 2018, our legislation passed a law saying that it was not illegal to intentionally infect someone with HIV.
Right.
So now we're all clamoring and terrified in case we accidentally infect someone with coronavirus. Well, in California, it's actually okay to intentionally aggress against someone by giving them HIV, which I'm glad there's antiretroviral drugs right now happening. But this, you know, as you pointed out in our last discussion, is something that can kill people.
Right.
And it's got a pretty ugly death sentence that goes with it.
Right. If the drugs don't work, it's a death sentence.
Yeah.
Coronavirus is not a death sentence. It can be. So can you stepping on a nail and not having, you think your tetanus shot is up to date and it wasn't. I mean, your dog's rabies shot might not have been adequate. You get rabies and bite someone. Life is messy. Yeah. For those who are C.S. Lewis fans, as I like to put it, liberty is like Aslan. Liberty is not a tame lion.
Yeah.
There are risks. And you can either be perfectly safe or perfectly free. You can't be both. Pick.
That is a good analogy.
And you know, I love my Aslan, but you know, people who like C.S. Lewis are like, oh my God, I love that. And the funny thing is, was it Benjamin Franklin who said those who will exchange liberty for safety will end up with neither?
Absolutely, because you can't ever be completely safe. It's a fallacy, and we need to give it up. And when you give away your rights and your autonomy and your decision to someone else, you're definitely not going to be safer. You know, the caveat being that if you're a vegetable and you can't do anything anyway, okay, go ahead and roll the dice. But if you're an autonomous human being, you know what's best for you, not the government. They've never even met you. They don't know you. How do they know what's best for you?
And Daniel, what it seems like is you're just not, you might be libertarian on some things, but you're just not a libertarian, and that's okay. But that's what libertarianism is. That's what libertarianism believes. And you say, insisting upon 100% would either probably crash and burn. Well, I insist on my freedom. What gives you the right to take any of it away?
Yeah.
Come do it yourself. And I'm not saying that to you personally. This is just what I say to everyone. All of you people out here who are advocating closing these businesses, unless you would go personally to force a business owner to shut his door down with a gun, you're a fucking coward to ask the government to do it for you.
Mm-hmm. And I really do think that that is the best frame to put it in, because ultimately that's what happens. And we've seen it happen with red flag laws when people they have a domestic dispute with I don't mean domestic violence. I mean, you have an argument with a friend or a spouse, and to seek revenge on them, you call and report them for a mental health issue or something, when otherwise everything would be fine. The government shows up and eventually they shoot and kill someone over these sorts of calls and threats. So it really does come down to that. It's not a far-fetched scenario to say that the government will kill you to enforce an arbitrary law.
Well, ultimately, if they're going to enforce it, that's what it has to come down to.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not raising this person's name to cause all kinds of whatever. I don't do the unpersoning of people. I think people are a combination of good and bad ideas. So I'm going to bring up Jordan Peterson. And if anyone's going to slather, too bad. He was talking about the law in Canada with the pronoun thing. And people were saying to him, you're making too big of a deal out of it. All that will happen is that you'd get fined. And he says, well, what happens if I don't pay the fine?
Correct.
All of it leads down to that. If a law is to be ultimately enforced, it has to end with, we say a gun, but we mean violence in some sort. It could be a club, but it ends in violence. Or it doesn't get enforced if somebody refuses.
Yeah.
Our today's society has gotten very enlightened, I would say, when it comes to issues of consent. You know, it's sexual matters. Yes means yes. Why don't we understand that that means that in everything?
I don't, I feel like everyone sort of lives in a moving microcosm. Whatever this issue is, this is what we deal with right now. Whatever the issue is, it was last month that we dealt with that. And there's not enough critical thinking to look at your whole life experience as a whole, and where something could lead you to. People get so consumed with panic and just reacting rather than forward thinking. And, there's a lot of reasons that I think people do that. Public schools, sort of the living in an echo chamber, all kinds of things.
Libertarianism is the ultimate consent culture, I say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to see, people supporting consent right now. Unfortunately, it is not happening in very, very much. It doesn't seem like on a broad scale, at least in California, with all of the people who are really aggressively supporting the government dictatorship, shutting down of businesses, and pulling and snitching on not just strangers, but also friends and family and businesses that they have personally, been customers of for many years. It's really disheartening.
Yeah. You're going to laugh. There's a show I'm doing on my regular channel, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. I don't watch or listen to any libertarians. I only listen and watch people on YouTube that I disagree with, because I want to sharpen my arguments. And if I'm wrong, I want to know it. So there's another local, he's in Denver, guy that I watch. And it's funny because he's an atheist. I'm a Christian. I don't watch any Christian programming either. I listen to a lot of atheists because it's challenging. And his show is called Mr. Atheist.
Oh,
you know him, right?
I do.
You know the show? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see his latest show?
No.
Okay. You know how he's very far left.
Oh, I do.
Okay. He's going back to work at his studio, and I got treated to like a 15-minute discussion on why it was okay for him to do it. Because it was, yes, because he weighed all his risks and all that. Oh boy, am I going to have some fun with this one. Really? Really, Jimmy? That's what you did?
He's got an exemption, but you and I don't, because he's more rational or because he's special. I'm sure he explained it away, in a very condescending tone.
But so can a lot of people. And I think what he did was fine. It's just he's being a hypocrite.
Right.
I have no problem with him going to the studio, but, Yeah.
And more power to you if you can back up your arguments, with an actual argument.
Right.
because we don't see enough of that anymore in the world. And that's another thing that bums me out is most of the arguments that I have experienced from people who are very against me protesting are just screaming emotional reactions, and they're repeating the same one or two talking points over and over again and not addressing any of the concerns I raised. So I respect people a lot more when they can bolster their own argument, even if I disagree with it fundamentally.
What's disheartening is there's certain people who just have a fundamentally different worldview, and they're being consistent within their worldview for what they're saying. And okay, I don't agree, but props for being consistent. It's
Right.
the libertarians that are making these arguments that I'm like, something is not adding up here.
I'm so disappointed. I don't like saying that because I don't want to be Debbie Downer. I try to generally be a really positive person and, you know, like, let's just move forward. Let's focus on the good. But it has gotten to me a little bit in the past couple of weeks to see how many libertarians are supporting the government-enforced lockdown as opposed to saying, hey, everyone, stay at home. These people are opposed to us speaking out against government tyranny, which I thought was the whole purpose of the Libertarian Party. If we read the principles and our activism, like what else is there?
And as we had discussed before, as I said, I don't expect anyone to be like the symbol of libertarian purity. It's even like Rothbard said, we're all allowed 3 heresies. But what I do have a problem with is claiming a non-libertarian idea as libertarian and trying to force it on the rest of the party. Me, I've got a few of my own non-libertarian ideas, and I just say, well, I disagree with libertarianism there. I don't get all butthurt when someone says it's not libertarian. I know it, and I don't try to force it into a philosophy where it doesn't fit.
Right. But
what I see today is people wanting to like act as if this attitude of supporting, restricting the movement of peaceful people for the benefit of others, and that to me is questionable, but let's take that as true for the sake of argument, is somehow libertarian. It's not. It's right in our statement of principles. There's this sentence in there: no person shall be forced to sacrifice their lives or their property for the benefit of others. Period. And that is exactly what is happening right now.
Right. And if you disagree, if this particular moment in history has changed your mind, okay, you've already made your opinion known, but own your shit.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't try to lie or weasel out of it. Just own it.
Yeah, don't LARP is what I told people.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, don't be a libertarian LARPer. If you don't agree, that's fine. And then for those who go, well, you know, this is, I've done like a million presentations on this. And when I say libertarian, I'm talking big L, because that's what I am.
Yeah.
Then there are people who go, well, you know, what are you, the gatekeeper of libertarianism? Okay. For the Libertarian Party, no, no one is. You want to know what is? The statement of principles.
Absolutely.
And our bylaw says that.
We do have a gate.
We do have a gate.
Because we're an organization, and it's okay that we have a gate. Philosophically, we can get, I'm this type, I'm that type, you know, all different types of libertarian. Fine, argue about it all the time. But it's in writing what the party is supposed to stand for and believe.
And now I'm going to answer Daniel again. He says, if it sinks the ships, everyone's rights are lost. If you violate rights in order to not sink the ship, everyone's rights are lost. So
Okay.
What's the more ethical decision? But let's forget about the everyone's, because people seem to think piling more people onto it makes them more right. Let's just do one-on-one, Daniel. You need me to do something for you to save your life, but I don't want to do it. Even most people who don't, how do you even put this? Most people will agree that unless I actively put you in that position that would cause you to die, I have no obligation to do anything. Like for instance, I've got 2 good kidneys. I'm the only match in the world for you. You need a kidney to live. I say no, you die. That's happens. But I haven't done anything wrong when it comes to let's put it though. There's two. Libertarianism is not about morality. It's about justice, and justice and morality are not the same thing. They intersect. For instance, it would be morally wrong for me to walk by a starving person on the street, but I cannot be compelled to give him my property. I should, but I cannot be compelled to. The should is morality. The compelling is justice. They're not the same thing. Though I don't think even morally you have a right to my fucking kidney. But if you were my son, maybe you did. It depends upon the relationship between the people.
And there are risks with all of these decisions,
right.
too. It doesn't exist, again, like a lot of the times when we are making these theories and hypothetical what ifs, we're looking at things in a vacuum.
And plus, this isn't the bubonic plague, dude.
Right.
It isn't going to sink the ship. But even if it were, you still don't get to violate rights and call yourself good.
And I'd say that it's different between whether or not I walk on a ship and I'm like, you know what? I want to murder you. So I'm going to walk over here and stomp on the ship and try to sink it to kill you.
That's different.
Totally different.
Totally different.
That's like going to, in my opinion, intentionally infecting someone with HIV, where I'm like, oh, my life sucks and I'm going to make your life suck too, and I hope you die. That, you could consider that attempted murder. And the courts argue about that all the time, and people have strong opinions on that, I think rightfully so. But we can't account for every hypothetical because that's all we do all day long.
Hypothetically, you're a single person. You enjoy sex and you've had many partners. You've tried to practice safe sex, but it's not 100%. You could have AIDS and not know it, and you get married and you infect your partner because you don't use protection when you're married. You guys think you're all cool. Should you not have? Should you have remained celibate because this can always happen?
That's a real scenario. It's not very common. So again, I don't think we should be trying to change the world because of it. But it's happened. It's just part of being a human being in an imperfect world, and being an imperfect human being too.
Daniel, who assumed an unsinkable ship? I said it might sink, but you still don't get to violate my rights. Too bad, so sad. You don't get to violate my rights. No means no. What part of no do you not understand? That's all it is about. You do not get to violate rights for the good of another person. You just don't. Now, people should do things positively, but it cannot be forced.
Right.
So a lot of the trolley development. You can go, Angela.
I don't have to pull any lever or do anything on any trolley. You can't make me walk up to the trolley and even make the decision.
Right. You didn't put the trolley in motion.
No. Here's Angela with the trolley.
Yeah. The trolley dilemma is one of the dumbest things. I'm sorry. It has nothing to do with libertarianism. It has to do with morals.
It's a call.
It's a moral issue, but libertarianism is not about morals. It's about justice. So in the trolley dilemma, that's a personal moral issue. And you could decide either way, and that's between you and your God or you and your conscience.
Right. And, I appreciate when we make arguments more interesting by assuming this or assuming that, but an unsinkable ship doesn't exist in reality. So I don't actually think that it's fair to make philosophical assessments on things that are imaginary.
There was George Smith was responding to Zolinsky, who was trying to defeat the gnat, if you remember. And he went on, he said, listen, we got to deal with the world we live in. So he goes, you can't be given examples about penis stealing witches. Now, somebody had actually done that, but what would you do? It's a great article. You don't make arguments based upon if a Martian's going to destroy the whole world unless you rape one person. That's just not going to happen.
Right. I completely agree. And, I appreciate people are doing that because they want to make their point. They want to get their point across. But you need to refine your point and you refine your arguments instead of grasping at something that is not reflected in reality.
So Frank says you come off as very harsh. It's funny that you think it's me asserting my bodily autonomy is harsh. I make no apologies for asserting my bodily autonomy. And if you think that comes off as harsh, I'd say you come off as entitled.
I just make a little bit of an apology sometimes, but it doesn't change my decisions or my opinion. You know, I feel bad about it when people die, and I'm like, oh, this sucks. But
Now, what's funny though is I give up a lot of my rights voluntarily.
yeah,
I'm a pacifist. I've voluntarily given up my right to self-defense because I just can't see myself doing that, and because of my religion. I don't hold my life in that high of a regard that I would kill another person to save my life. That's something I voluntarily do, but no one can force me to be a pacifist. And at any moment, I can change my mind and go carry. I don't now as a choice. I give things to charity. No one can force me to. I think everyone should, but they cannot force me to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Forced compassion is not compassion.
It's not.
It's not. We're talking about government force. Now, what people should do, I think they should be doing a whole lot more just in general to help people. But you cannot force it.
And the two aren't mutually exclusive. You know, like you can have a strong opinion and you can be bold about something in the way you say it and still do a lot of charity work. You know, I'm getting all of this grief for organizing a protest. People are calling me a literal murderer. Before I did that, you know, I did a charity event with Tom Woods, Dave Smith, Michael Mellis, and Michael Bolden, and we raised over $5 grand for New York's Meals on Wheels because they have been hit really hard with all of the coronavirus-related lockdowns and people are hungry. So I'm like, why everyone, you think I'm a murderer and I don't want to help people. It was the first thing I did.
Right. I just don't want to be forced.
Yeah. I get
we're opposed to force. And if being opposed to force is harsh, I'm harsh.
Yeah. I'm just, yeah. I'm not
to me, that's clown world. It's clown world to say that being opposed to force is harsh. Should you help people? You absolutely should. I don't go around singing my praises. You don't know what I do. Not you, Angela, but you in general. But sometimes you have to say it because people don't believe it. We had a friend who was in a desperate situation and was going to be homeless in an area in Nevada where it was about to become illegal to be homeless. So we took him into our home for 3 months. I do a lot for people and animals. I'm a big animal rescuer type thing. I think everyone needs to be voluntarily doing a lot of things, but it cannot be forced. It absolutely cannot be forced. We are very blessed. And again, because I am a religious person, I do think to whom much is given, much is expected, but not forced. Even God expects it to be given voluntarily. And if people don't believe in God, that's okay. I don't push that down people's throat. I'm not that kind of Christian. I used to be, and I don't like that person. You know, but you can't force it.
You can, yeah, you could say God, you can say nature, you can say whoever it was.
Conscience, the greater good, whatever, you know, the universe. We do have a higher purpose. I don't care how anyone words it. There's an inherent human dignity that we all feel called to recognize and honor. But it's the most dishonoring to human dignity to resort to force.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting because people are talking about how harsh this seems, but the other side of the coin is that it's incredibly harsh to force someone to be locked in their home and socially isolated, possibly not able to provide for themselves. And we're seeing it because, big surprise, not everyone got their pathetic $1,200 bribe from the federal government. It didn't happen. So what's more harsh, to say that you can't make me stay home, or to say you're going to stay home and you're going to starve, and slowly, one by one, your bills will go unpaid. You'll lose your internet because of eventually that, you know, that little extension that internet companies are giving, it'll pass. You'll lose your cell phone. You'll lose
your kids might not get to go to college. You might be causing intergenerational poverty with this feigned compassion that's just asking the state to use guns against other people. I do not find that as compassionate.
It's harsh.
It's very harsh. But people sit on this feigned like they're better than other people. No, you're not better than other people. I'm thinking of if you did the young church, you know, Anna Kasparian. I'm better than you.
Right.
You
Right.
know, no, you're not. There are people killing themselves.
Absolutely. I've had so many people reach out to me over mental health issues. I've had, like one of my friends who lives in New York who has struggled with depression most of her adult life told me that she did call the suicide hotline. She was thinking about killing herself. She does sex work and, or something very closely related to it, although it's not prostitution. And she's not getting a stimulus check and she hasn't filed taxes in 3 or 4 years. And so she decided, I'm going to violate the quarantine because I feel like I'm just going to kill myself if I sit here and rot. What is she morally repugnant for going out and meeting her friends as opposed to sitting at home and contemplating taking her life?
It's
So
the devastation, the financial devastation that's being wrought on people right now is going to be far more impactful and deadly than the virus.
absolutely.
It is simple as that. And those advocating for it are they. It's most of them do not know what they're doing.
Absolutely.
They don't realize it, but you inadvertently have blood on your hands.
I do wish too that they would be amenable, to hearing what we say, because at first, until people get angry and crazy, I feel like we're talking past each other because they're
They
screaming,
are.
I care about people, so they should stay home. And you and I are saying, I care
about people, so we need to find a way to do everything. We need to, again, we got to find the most good for the most people without violating rights, and it's possible.
Right. And everyone is screaming too, you're being selfish, because I want to go outside. Well,
Right.
is it wrong to give myself basic care?
And here's the thing. I have a job. I haven't been impacted. I still have my full-time income. This isn't about me. Why am I speaking out? Because I care about other people.
Right.
I never left the house to begin with. Nothing in this is really affecting me. I didn't like being around people all that much. I worked from home. I rarely went out. I've been training for this my whole life. I'm not doing this for me. I'm happy as a clam at high tide. I'm doing this for other people because I see the devastation that is being wrought upon people. People who struggled and scraped their whole life to start a business, and just to see it wiped away, their inheritance to their children wiped away. And you think you're good? Okay, I understand your point. I understand you care about people getting sick. You got to care about everything. We got to care about it all in balance. You can't have everything. You want to talk about making the perfect the enemy of the good. That ain't happening on our side.
No.
We're trying to go for the good, the general good. You're looking for the perfect world where nobody gets sick. That's not real.
It isn't. It's just not real. I have a 65-year-old family member with diabetes who encouraged me to go out and protest. He said, raise hell, take over the city. I'm, quote unquote at risk. I'll wear a mask when I go to the grocery store, but the stock market was already taking a dive, but now it's destroyed my savings and my retirement fund. I'll have to work till the day I die now. I can't take it anymore. Someone needs to go and get things back on track so that people like me can actually rest their final days and not drop dead at the office. And that really motivated me to go out and protest.
Yeah, to me, it's for other people. I don't have kids. I am not worried about leaving anything to my kids. This hasn't affected me one bit, honestly. But I'm incensed for other people. I'm incensed at the force for other people. I'm incensed about how lives are being destroyed.
Yeah.
And it's going to be intergenerational.
Yeah.
Poverty and loss of opportunity doesn't go away. It just, it perpetrates.
Yeah. So, that's why I'm doing everything I can. I'm just one person, but I have a pretty good circle of influence. I'm doing everything I can to fight against this. I've got, a protest organized for May 1st in Los Angeles County. It's going to be in downtown LA. The location has yet to be released because I'm a little bit concerned about Karens and people who are going to try to wreck it. So I'm waiting until we get a little bit closer, 1 p.m. The other thing I've done is I've got a private group online, not on Facebook, for people who need to run their businesses, and we're going to do it black market style. Haircuts, manicures, massage, chiropractic, buy-sell, anything that someone else who doesn't know you or know your struggle has deemed non-essential. I'm trying to offer a venue so that you can do it and get your life back on track. And that is me doing the greatest good that I can. It's just reaching out and doing as much as I can to help people when they're experiencing this crisis.
Daniel, we have already responded to this, but I'm going to do it one more time. The right to life is the top right. Agreed. Your right to life does not impose an obligation on anyone else except for not to actively kill you. Potentially having a virus is not actively killing you, just like you driving a car is not actively killing somebody if your body should happen to fail, because it will one day. All of ours will. We're all going to die someday. And it could very well be from a heart attack. That doesn't mean that you should stay in your house, because you might be in a position where if you had a heart attack, it would cause someone else to lose their life. That's a real thing. It happens all the time.
Yeah, we could just keep making up rights for forever. You know, I take Remicade every 4 months. A nurse comes to my home and sets up an IV, and I sit for 2 hours with an IV. If Remicade didn't exist, hopefully I wouldn't die. But yeah, I've been hospitalized many times. I don't know. I don't have a right to Remicade. You know, if something doesn't really, like, if it's man-made and created in a recent technological advance, how does it become a right? How do things like that even become rights?
And the right to life is not merely the right to breathe and have a beating heart. It's the right to live your life. And you do not have the right to restrict other people's lives for your life. You just don't. Yeah. You have the right to take precautions for yourself.
And I think, you know, he's saying that it should be practiced. You can practice it.
Yeah.
You can still practice that, and it doesn't make it a right. Just like we've been discussing all of our practices and helping homeless people. And, you know, I do practice things that are not my absolute right because I'm a person walking around in society. You know, I agree. We live in a society, but the society doesn't decide my rights. The fact that I'm a person, that's what gives me my rights.
Exactly. It's just by virtue of being a human being.
Yeah. You know, I'm kind of curious to hear how your protest went.
Okay, yeah, let's talk, and then the National Party. Okay, the protest went really well. And it turns out, I read in the reports afterwards, there were more people in cars than I realized, because they numbered it at like 4,000 to 5,000 people. I counted it at like under 1,000, but I was looking at the people on the ground. There was about 750 people probably walking around, or not in cars, let's just put it that way. But apparently the cops counted, and there was a lot more cars. Frank, we are expecting people to argue, but Daniel's not answering our points. He's just repeating his, and that's not an argument. We've addressed each of them, but that's okay. We could just disagree. So people got to hear both sides, and they will they'll decide what they wish to decide. That's perfectly acceptable. Disagreement is healthy. So there were thousands of people in cars. The people in cars were, I'm not into noise, and they were honking, so that's somewhat obnoxious. Yeah. But listen, some people shout, some people do whatever, but it was completely peaceful. Even the police issued a statement afterwards that it was a completely peaceful protest.
It's great.
Now, some people were getting upset because people chose to go down there without masks on. That's their choice.
Yep.
They gathered together. That's their choice. And when I saw it, I could have chosen to go home or go and hang out. And I chose to go and hang out. Though I did, well, I didn't have like, I had on a mask, actually. It was my plague doctor mask. And if people go, well, that's not a technical mask. Neither is your little handkerchief walking around playing cops and robbers either.
Your bandana?
That big rubber thing was probably way more protection than the people going, you know, with a t-shirt. So
a doctor wouldn't use a t-shirt, so it doesn't qualify. Sorry.
Right. So those people, that's what they chose. But here's something, and other people go, well, they had masks, but they were standing too close to each other. Okay, the cops were standing next to each other. Why is it okay for them?
Right, right.
Why is it okay for you to be in front of the cashier? It's all so arbitrary.
Absolutely. You know, I was in Whole Foods the other day, and I'm standing on the little X, right? Because all the stores have an X. And I look at the person next to me, our X's, because the lines aren't 5 feet apart. I'm like, we're 2.5 feet apart. I don't care, but this is madness. This doesn't make any sense.
And families, it's okay to be next to each other. Okay, well, then why is that okay? You know, my husband goes out and gets something to eat or whatever, comes back home, he could infect me, right? So why now are couples allowed to live in the same house?
Yeah, it's bizarre.
And then the joke was that the Duggar family is violating the assembly. They have too many people assembling. That was on Babylon Bee, I think. But it's all completely arbitrary.
People who are at press releases, usually government officials, they're all standing like sardines in a can. So,
and we're not allowed to get haircuts, but you want to know who is getting haircuts? The police.
Absolutely.
Talk about privileged class.
Because they have to. Same with military, because you can't have long hair. Isn't that interesting how government issued rights work?
It's you know, well, don't the hospital admitted the men that work in hospitals who are having to deal with patients or whatever, shouldn't they want to look smart? You know, proper, prim and proper, you know, I was using the British term. Why do they not get those rights?
I don't know. I'm getting some split ends, and my boyfriend has offered to give me a haircut because he knows how to use scissors, which is frightening.
Well, you can see I don't got roots no more because I called up a hairdresser who needs money. I said, will you come to my house and do the hair? And she's like, is anyone sick? I said, no. And because we're not. And she said, okay.
Yeah.
And we paid her cash.
Yep.
Because
I'm probably going to do the same thing in about a week, maybe even this weekend, because my friend who is a hairstylist who's willing just doesn't live close by. But I may swing by her place or convince her to swing by my place. And I want people to do that. I'm not going to disclose the location, but I am setting up.
Oh, I'm not disclosing the who.
Right. I am setting up a place, though, so that people can start getting the things that they need to do. Massage, not considered essential, I guess. But what happens when you throw your back out?
Okay, you want to hear something crazy? And I'm going to be causing a stink about this. Okay, I've been ill recently myself. Nothing to do with coronavirus. It's internal. It's nothing catching. So I now had to go on hormone replacement therapy, but they put this pellet in you. Like they have to. It's awful. Okay, but because it does raise a risk of breast cancer, my doctor needs right at the beginning what do you call it? A control mammogram, so that they can see if there were any changes. Guess what? Mammograms aren't essential. So now I'm going on 3 months now on hormone replacement therapy and could not get a mammogram, so that my doctor would have a control mammogram.
That's really interesting.
And that is risking my life right there.
Yeah, all of my doctor's appointments, except for my iron infusions, which I have to go to the hospital for every 2 weeks, by the way, I'm going tomorrow. All of my doctor's appointments are done remotely through video chat. I'm not going to disclose the gory details, but I usually get a physical exam because I have Crohn's disease that affects my colon.
Yeah, no, I'm very familiar. You're right. Your life, because polyps and all that are a very, very big risk. You got to be on top of it.
My mouth, and thankfully I don't have it, but sometimes it can affect other parts of your body.
Right.
It's called fistulas, where you get ulcers that will literally burrow through your flesh.
Right. Fistulas are nothing to play with.
I would appreciate, even though it's unpleasant, being able to see my doctor in person, because sometimes if I get a cut or a scrape, I kind of freak out and I'm like, is it a thing? Am I getting a thing? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I can't even go to the doctor.
Well, I can't go to the chiropractor either, and I've got a bad back. And then if it gets bad, then I can't get opiates either, because the government has decided I can't have that.
It's ridiculous.
It is.
I don't know how to transition this, but I wanted to bring something up.
Oh, go ahead. Just go.
I want to ask you about your protest sign, because it inspired me to do something.
Oh, okay.
So maybe you should share what your protest sign said.
Oh, I wish I had them. I've got them. I think everyone's seen them. I'm not going to go run and get them. They're right around the corner, though. The one I was carrying said, "We need you to report your neighbors. Call 1-800 I'm a Nazi."
Well, okay. So I saw the sign, and late last night I was really inspired. It got me thinking, I need to get that phone number. The 800 number wasn't available, but I did purchase 559 I'm a Nazi. And I have set up a fake reporting line. It'll take probably a couple more hours for it to go live.
Oh my God.
And I have fake, they look just like the real thing from the LA County website, flyers that I am going to be sharing all over the internet. Don't spoil it when you see them, everyone. Share them. I'm going to be posting it. Like, this is an outrage. I can't believe that people are doing this. So I want people to actually call in. And when you call in, there will be a hotline that says, "Thank you for calling 559. I'm a Nazi."
That's awesome.
Yeah, like wherever you live, just use the hotline number, because it's not necessarily going to say Los Angeles County, and we'll probably change the recording. I have a friend who's really funny who's helping me. So
that is great.
Yeah, make your flyers. 559 I'm a Nazi. That's the tip hotline. It's national hotline.
That is fantastic. That made me laugh. Just like there was a joke I'm telling everyone who's in the chat that Angela said last time that she was going to wear a mask, but it was going to be one of those masks that had your mouth open.
Mask.
You're like, I'm wearing a mask.
I'm going to rock a ski mask and red lipstick at the next protest. I'm actually rocking a giant inflatable shark suit that my boyfriend thought would be really funny to get, because it's technically a mask. It covers my face and has a little panel. So I'll be breathing my entire body air instead of just.
Oh man. But I love my plague doctor mask.
Plague doctor mask was really good, and
I had so many pictures taken of me, but they're like, "Oh, turn your head to the side so we can see your beak."
Yeah, I am hoping that, and I appreciate that people are taking it seriously and wearing masks if they're concerned, but I want to see some more trolling masks out there, because this is a perfect opportunity.
Oh, I've got 2 more coming in tomorrow.
Oh, that's so excellent.
I'll show everyone.
I have a Darth Vader helmet that I'm probably going to wear. It's pretty cheap. I have the Guy Fawkes mask. I have a cheap, kind of weird, almost plague doctor mask. It's got like a really long nose. It's more Shakespearean, plastic, but it sort of covers my mouth, sort of. So why not rock it, because the government said we should.
And there's a video I just posted, I think it was yesterday. So where the government is do as I say and not as I do. Because the most filthy, germ-infested place in Castle Rock where I live is the fucking post office. And the post office will not let you use the restroom, even if you wanted to wash your hands. So say you sneeze in your hands or whatever you were concerned, it's against the law to use the bathroom at the post office. They don't prop the 2 front doors open. There's 2 levels of doors, so everyone's touching these nasty doors. So my husband and I planted ourselves outside the post office, and we're sanitizing everyone's hands. Oh, we're so harsh and selfish. I do a lot of things, but the governments do as I say, not as I do. They did not make any attempt to have hand sanitizing stations, wouldn't even prop open the doors, and they don't let you wash your hands there.
Nasty. I mean, before this whole thing popped off, I was kind of a germaphobe anyway. I don't like touching things. It's disgusting. I usually use little hand wipes on baskets and stuff at the grocery store. I know that rationally the germs are everywhere, not just on the handles, but still it grosses me out, because I think about everyone's going to the bathroom and not everyone washes their hands. They just touching everything. I'm just like, this place is just full of the H1N1, AIDS, herpes, cold, snot, everything,
Everything, fungolitis.
I just want to get it off, and now the government has made this, now I'm paranoid, and they're like, ha, 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 ha. Stand up in the post office and breathe each other's air and just touch everything, and then good luck. Nasty.
Yeah, we right at the beginning of this, I invested like probably $300 in hand sanitizing supplies, and we've given them out to people around here. We had to make it, so I buy gallons of the aloe and of the whatever, but and it was expensive, but we got it here, and it's not for us. You know, we're doing outreach with it. And when we go out and do outreach, it's not political. We don't carry libertarian shit. We don't say anything unless the people ask us. A lot of times they ask us if we're working for the government, and we're like, no, we're just community volunteers.
Well, you must be a literal Nazi.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
Now, one other thing before we segue to the National Party, because that's something I know both of us want to talk about. But something we discussed briefly before is the concept of the unintended consequences of what we're doing here. In general, well, we all know viruses can mutate. And what does it take for viruses to mutate? It takes time.
Yeah.
Not all mutations are, most mutations are detrimental to the virus. It makes them less potent. But in a perfect storm, it can make them more potent. And that's what happened in 1918 with the second wave of the virus. It mutated to be 90% lethal to whoever got it. The way you avoid giving a virus the opportunity to mutate to something worse, even though it might mutate to something less, this is a crapshoot you're taking, is to not give it time. And what gives viruses time is a population to feed on. It is a calculated risk to have a virus that is not as deadly as it could be, to have it run its natural course, build herd immunity, and that's what kills it, because it no longer has hosts to feed upon. Absolutely. We're prolonging the life of this virus right now. We're taking a long gamble, and it may pay off. It may mutate to something less, but it could mutate to something worse. And we are giving it the time to do so. We're not playing nature's game on nature's own terms. We're thinking we can beat nature. And that usually doesn't work out. And there are countries that have already took the approach of, we need to build herd immunity amongst the people who can most handle it in order to protect the vulnerable. So who should stay home and be isolated are the vulnerable. We need to let the healthy people catch it and get over it and build herd immunity, because that is what's going to protect the vulnerable. Right now, if you want to talk about harsh and selfish, which I don't believe, I'm just using the terminology against it, we're doing that by protecting the young and robust, because it's the young and robust getting the herd immunity that's going to protect the weak.
And there are lots of studies, and there's lots of studies in general, but there are lots of studies that show that it's really not harming children. This is sort of, you could sort of think of it like chicken pox, except even lesser. If you get it when you're little, then it's more just like a cold or a mild flu, as opposed to, really attacking your respiratory system and making it impossible to breathe.
Now, Daniel says people aren't gaining immunity on COVID-19. That's impossible. Viruses you gain immunity to. Now, you will not have immunity to a future mutation. Correct. And there have been, I think, 3 branches of mutations right now, and there's limited immunity on those. But let me tell you something, Daniel. If you cannot gain immunity on COVID-19, guess what else you can't get? A vaccine, because that's how vaccines work. So are we going to keep everyone inside forever, or are we going to figure out how to live with this and have a real society? If we cannot get immunity, then we cannot have a vaccine. And unless we're all just going to commit mass ritual suicide, this means we've got to figure out how to live with it. And keeping everyone inside their house is not it.
No, I don't want to stay inside my whole life because I could catch this virus again and again and again. You know what? People catch the flu over and over again. Almost everyone gets a seasonal cold every year. It sucks. Maybe this is worse. I don't know, but we just have to go on with our lives as human beings. I just reject the notion of staying inside for the rest of my life because I'm scared of a virus.
There's no circumstance in which that is feasible or the right answer. And again, it's even more important for us just to get back to trying to figure out how to have a society if people aren't gaining immunity. But I'm going to say something else that people aren't going to like. This isn't the bubonic plague.
It's not.
It does not justify this reaction. There's only one factor that potentially justifies this, even if you are a utilitarian. It's the fact that we have exposed the weakness in our healthcare system where we didn't have enough beds and respirators. That's the one thing, because we're trying to keep the hospital system from being overloaded. And I completely understand that and have empathy for that. But the fact is, we are going to have to go out in the world. People are treating this like it's a death sentence. You are fucking insane. It is not. When I said I was at a protest, somebody asked me if I bought my body bag yet. I'm like,
whatever.
Dude, have you gone fucking nuts?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I will worry about that when I'm dead or not, because I'm dead. It's just so hyperbolic and insane. You know, you could walk down the street and there have been stories of frozen bathroom sludge dropping from airliners and killing people randomly. You can't account for everything.
You can't.
It's just, I'm so tired of hyperbolic emotional arguments and screaming about body bags and I hope you die and you're murdering everyone, because colds kill elderly people.
Yep. And again, the flu is no joke.
Common sense. If you're sick, stay home.
Right.
If you're high risk, stay home.
And we should have all already been practicing better cleanliness. If that's the one thing that comes out of this, hallelujah. Yeah. That's a great lesson learned. And I'm like all for that.
Absolutely. It's just none of the studies and the data are so all over the place too. There's just, I'm sure that everyone else has probably experienced. I have fatigue from reading everything. There is no scientific consensus on what we should do, because different countries are handling things differently and the data keeps changing and not everyone has been tested. We don't have a perfect source.
And how is Sweden handling this? The exact opposite of us.
Right. And they seem to be fine. And then people will point at other countries nearby and say, oh, Sweden has a higher death rate. Well, Sweden has more human beings.
Right. You know? You can't deal with numbers. You have to deal with percentages of population. That's what people are totally not.
You can manipulate statistics to support whatever you want. You know,
we've got 328 billion people here. And you're talking about 300,000? If you just want to deal with I call it, you might remember the short story. I don't know if you were traumatized by this short story when you were a kid, but it's called The Cold Equations. About the girl who, she wanted to see her brother on another planet or whatever, and they were bringing medicine to this planet, so she was a stowaway. But it turned out they only had gas for the cargo they planned for.
Oh.
So right before they got to the planet, so it was either kill everyone on the planet because they didn't get the medicine, or throw her out of the airlock. So she eventually had to be thrown out of the airlock. And it was called The Cold Equations. Math is math. It doesn't care. And the math of 300,000 out of the population of this world, I mean, not this world, this country, never mind the world, but this country, I'm sorry, that is not a national emergency. It just isn't. And then when people goes, probably someone you know is going to die. No, if it's 300,000, probably you are not going to know somebody who died. You're going to know someone who knows someone who knows someone who died.
And it's still sad, but
it's still sad, right?
Because
you know how many people cancer kills?
Yeah, people die. I know people who
are all going to die.
Yeah, no one gets
100%. It's just of what, and hopefully it's after a long, healthy life and you know, not coronavirus, but. You know how many people cars kill each year? I mean, 300,000 is not a national emergency.
Yeah. And this is why we need strong leadership to take a stand against this madness.
So yes, that's the segue. I've been completely disappointed in the messaging and position of the National Party. I think it's been anemic at best. And anemic is probably being overly complimentary, I think. It's been scattergun, which I know you agree with. And the problem is, when anyone complains about it, isolated statements here and there can be pointed to, but there's no coherent, consistent, insistent is the better word, message of stop violating rights, stop violating rights. It's just milquetoast here and there, with most of the concentration being upon consequentialist things like, well, the stimulus is putting our children into debt. Yeah, that's true. That is a good point. But what about other points that we're just shying away from? Because we've become cowardly.
Right.
We've become really, really cowardly. We think we have something to lose when we don't really, ultimately. And once you start living cautious like that as a third party, because third party politics do not operate by the same ground rules that major party, the duopoly, does, then you're good for nothing. And the party that existed at the time of 9/11 is not a party that exists today, because this party raised holy hell. And a lot of the same arguments were being made about our safety and this and that and the other thing. And we did not back down. But today, you can't even get the super majority, probably could get the majority, but the super majority of libertarians to say they oppose mandatory vaccinations. No. I'm not so sure you can get a majority on the LNC to say they oppose mandatory vaccination.
No, even if they oppose it privately, they just don't want to put that message out there because they're very scared that it's going to turn people off.
They think you're going to be lumped in with anti-vaxxers.
Right.
You can't be scared of that. I oppose mandatory vaccines. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I collect vaccines. It's like, as I said to you last time, when I hear there's a new vaccine, my response is take my money now. Stick me.
Yeah.
Because I want to be protected against everything I can, but it's my choice.
Yeah, I don't get a single vaccination. I can't actually.
Right.
For everyone who is screaming about how I need to be vaccinated because they think they know my health history. When you're on immunosuppressant drugs, you cannot receive any live vaccination. And many of them, like the one I take, I also can't receive dead vaccinations. And there are other complications. Not that it's really anyone's business that I have to explain my entire health history to convince them, but there are a host of reasons that you shouldn't compel mandatory vaccinations. And I think the reason at the top of the list, just like the reason that we shouldn't be locked down, is because it's my right to do what I want with my body.
Correct. Absolutely. And one of the reasons I do get vaccinations for everyone is because I do believe in my communal responsibility that can't be forced, and that I'm healthy, I can get them, and it helps the people who can't. But the government cannot force me to do that.
Well, I wish you luck. I know you're going to fight to get something going on the LNC. I put forth a motion in the California Party yesterday, and I should definitely give Brandon Nelson and Richard Fast credit because they did most of the drafting on it to make a statement, a resolution opposing all of the stay-at-home orders and business closures in California. Ordinarily, I think that resolutions are pretty toothless and kind of a waste of time. However, right now, no one is speaking out against this stuff, even speaking out against it, except freaking Trumpster Republicans. And that is shameful.
It is. And they're like, the cognitive dissonance is so insane with them because it's like, pick one, support Trump or be opposed to this stuff. Pick one.
From the guy who just out of the other side of his mouth, in the same sentence said that he had absolute authority because he's the president. So you worship basically your dictator, but you are screaming for your rights because you're an autonomous person. Regardless of whatever mental gymnastics, it takes to get to that point, those people shouldn't be everyone who is unsure and searching for a leader, that shouldn't be what they're looking at. It should be the LP. And that's why we need to be the banner bearers.
Right, and we're not. Daniel, I would just want to say he's wishing us a good day. So thank you very much, Daniel. It was nice speaking with you.
Yeah, and thank you. I appreciate it, all of your comments.
So with on the national thing, and me, I normally have a policy that I'm not necessarily a namer, but on some situations when you're a public figure, I am. It's been Nick that I've been upset with. Everyone knows that. It's no secret. So the other day, what's it, 2 days ago, he posts a Vox article. It's all just leftist talking points, trying to claim that these protests are primarily some kind of conspiracy to get Trump reelected. And some of it might be. But the fact that you post this article uncritically, and in your own post, the only thing you do is pull a quote out of it, you don't disagree with it at all, and you just post it out there as the chair of the Libertarian Party. That is absolutely insane. And then when I said to him, way to shit on other libertarians, Nick, he goes, well, how is mere posting of an article shitting on other libertarians? Don't play lawyer with me. I've worked with enough of them. I know the game. You know exactly what you're doing. You don't just uncritically post something that tries to make all protesters look bad when you know, in fact, party are some people going out there. I'm like so disappointed in how he's handling this. And it's a shame because he wrote a great article on voluntary action. I don't know if you saw it. It's for the Libertarian Institute. But he doesn't spread that all around. It's a great article. It, you know, opposing force, but it seems like he says one thing out of this side and another thing out of this side. It's absolutely crazy. And I've been really, really upset because then he was the one who posts passively aggressively also. Something like, it's funny how everyone now thinks they can question experts or something along those lines.
Just now?
This was like yesterday or the day before. Go look. You know those posts you can make where you put the colored background and it's just your words? It's and what I said was a paraphrase, but it captured the essence.
No, it's, you know, I don't like to trash Nick publicly. Let me background, you know, I'm the state coordinator for the Mises Caucus. I'm in very tight with Michael Hyde, Dave Smith, and people who are hypercritical of Nick. And I completely respect why they are critical, but I try to stay on good terms with everyone, and I would consider Nick a friend and a colleague in the legal field. But I got to tell you, from one snake to another, with the legal field, you know, don't try to slither past me with that nonsense. You need to, as a party leader, you need to be unapologetic about what you believe. And like you have mentioned before, on your positions that are not libertarian, own them.
Right.
Own them. Don't make it ambiguous. If you're
well, here's the thing. You know, I respect Nick immensely. You probably seen in the Mises group, I get in a lot of fights. Because I say, come on, it's ridiculous.
Chill out a little bit, guys.
You know, get over it or get a room, do something. But I also don't, like, when someone's wrong, they're wrong. I don't care if they're a friend of mine. I don't care. When they're wrong, they're wrong. But I still say, and people get mad at me, that I still think, no matter what, that Nick is the best chair we've had. That doesn't mean he's perfect, though he's starting to ruin that legacy a little bit with me with this.
We need real leadership right now on this issue. And what's frustrating to me is you and I aren't saying that people shouldn't wear masks.
No.
Or
even that they shouldn't stay home.
Right.
You can't be forced to.
Right.
Some people should stay home.
We need a statement on that, and we need to be clear on it and not vague and giving people misinformation. Right. You know, and I've taken a lot of grief, but I'm a party leader and I have to be an advocate for my party. And also, before I did start speaking up really strongly in opposition to it, we had an XCOM meeting and I felt the temperature of the room and everybody on the XCOM. And it's a wide group of people. We got pragmatists, we got anarcho-capitalists, everything in between, young and old. They were all just like, oh, this is dumb. And I feel that it's my responsibility to speak out because my constituents and the people who elected me are saying we need to speak out and do something. So
well, as I said, the state parties are much stronger on this issue than the national party is. The state chair of Colorado is on fire, Victoria Reynolds. She's one of the big organizers of the Denver thing. She's like completely right. She's been catching some shit, but you know, the state parties in general are much stronger than the national party. But this is a national issue.
It is
not a state issue. I mean, it is a state issue too, but I mean, the national press is looking to the national party.
We need. I mean,
so as I told you, I'm going to be introducing some resolutions, and we'll see. We'll see.
Good luck. I support them. We need. And if there are other people on the XCOM listening on the LNC, we need you to support this. California right now has only got 9 members supporting. We need 10 to get this resolution passed. So I'm telling everyone, please write your XCOM and tell them to pass this resolution. Stop pussyfooting around and toying with the language or hemming and hawing. Oh, I don't know. No, we need to support people's rights.
Absolutely. And the other issue, you know, I've been having with Nick is even if he's, let me make an analogy to a different thing. There's a lot of times people will say to some conservative talkers when they get accused of being alt-right, and they're not, but they'll say, doesn't it bother you that most of your audience is alt-right? And I to think that that can be a legitimate thing, that you got to wonder what you might be saying that is attracting a certain group, even if you don't intend that.
Sure.
Now, Nick can play the I'm not trying to shit on other libertarians, but go and look at who's commenting and cheering him on. It's
Right.
all the people that are shitting on other libertarians. So even if that's not your intent, you might got to wonder why you're attracting those people.
And, you know, I have a good analogy for that. This is a question that Jordan Peterson gets asked all the time. You have a lot of people who are alt-right, whatever your definition of that is. I don't always think that it's accurate.
It's not usually,
but the accusation stands. You have a lot of alt-right guys who listen to you. And he says, good, because I want to influence them for the better.
Right.
And I would never water down my message or change it because I've attracted bad people, because I want them to know the truth. So if you are speaking to people who are cheering you on, you know, and they're, if your audience is left-leaning and pro-vaccination, mandatory lockdown and mandatory this, that, what message are you giving them? Because you should be grabbing that opportunity.
Right.
You know, not pandering.
Right. So again, I wish the message he was giving out was like that column he wrote, because that column is one of the best. That's what's so frustrating, because he's like both the best and the worst right now.
Right.
Because that column was very, very well written.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you seen it? Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I have seen it.
I thought it was really, really good. And it was written very even toned, and you know, you don't have to be all spitfire like I tend to be. You know, he can be his typical Mr. Stoic.
Everyone has a different style and a different personality, and I think that's great, because it takes different types to reach different people. What I care about is people being principled and supporting the message of liberty over, I don't know, fear-mongering, or I don't want to be anti-science. We've said over and over again, it's not about being anti-science.
No, it's definitely not with us. Viruses are no freaking joke. And being pro-rights does not mean you're anti-science.
No. There's so much, you know, conflation of these issues, you know, and then, oh, if you think that, then you must think this, or, oh, if you dabble in that, then you must not believe that. It's not a hard line.
Right.
I want freedom for everyone. I want everyone to be as safe as they reasonably can be.
Without violating rights. The
Right.
side constraints, the Nozikian side constraints, to me are just, that's it.
Yep.
That it all boils down to that. All boils down to positive and negative rights.
Yeah. So I hope that other people on the XCOM will support your resolution. And I also would love to hear from people who are running in office. I know we have a convention allegedly coming up. That's a whole other can of worms. But I would like to hear positions from people who want to get elected and voted in. Because if
ask them all.
Yeah.
I ask them all. That's what I say to everyone, because, you know, people change their mind, whatever. I let people speak for themselves, even though you know, I might have, you know, my ideas of what so-and-so might think. I don't know. Ask them, though. I hope delegates do that. I really hope they do. And I hope that those who are considering the positions that are running really, you know, think it through and come to a real solid libertarian position.
Absolutely. So, you know, that's what I think. And I hope that everyone just really fights for freedom. And yes, Daniel, I agree with you about the flu shot.
See, and I disagree, but that's okay.
But I
get it every time.
Get it, go for it. I don't really care. Some of my friends get it and they say it works, and the other friends get it and then they get the flu. It doesn't.
I got really, really, really sick one year from the flu that convinced me that even if it's just a 5% chance, I'd take it, because I'd never been so sick in my life. But what happened is I got strain A, got over it, and then immediately got strain B. My doctor was just like befuddled. And let me tell you, Tamiflu, never again. That Tamiflu made me sicker than the freaking flu. That was awful.
And it's like, do you know how much I care about whether or not you choose to get a vaccine?
Right.
Almost nothing. Like, go for it. You know, I take a shitload of supplements. I also get Remicade. People think that, oh, if you oppose, you know, certain levels of vaccination or mandatory vaccines, then you're a crazy person. Or they think if you take supplements, you know, you must hate vaccines. If you take vaccines, then you're addicted to big pharma. No, this is all a sliding scale. If I want to freaking take vitamin C and I feel that I have to get injected with some crap so that I don't die, it's my choice. What do you care, right? Go get your own injection and your own vitamin.
And the funny thing with this government force thing is it has the opposite effect. Because people, when they're forced to do something, it's just kind of almost a natural human reaction to say, fuck you, I'm going to do the opposite.
Absolutely.
If you do it through education and community, then people cheerfully do things. And people forget that. So like gay rights, what didn't start with the government forcing it? It started with the community. Politics is a lagging indicator of what the community has already decided.
Right.
If you really want to stop the virus, the way to do it is not through force. It is through community and education.
Absolutely. And we see it in communities, and we see it in freaking marketing, you know, with the businesses that are still alive, you know, which, by the way, for everyone who hates evil corporations, that's all that's going to be left.
That's all that's going to be left.
So enjoy ushering in your giant corporate, you know, Fourth Reich that you're so terrified of.
Because the small businesses is what's been killed off. The people who can afford it less. And we talk about minorities and wanting to give them upward mobility. You want to know what gives them upward mobility? Businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just killed that.
Los Angeles, it's just absolutely devastating because we have so many undocumented people, and a lot of them work, and they work really hard, but they work, you know, labor jobs, hard labor. They do things under the table. They don't qualify for $1,200. Idiot Governor Gavin Newsom thought that he would pander to them by trying to make some plan so that they can get $500 a month. How insulting to throw $500 at someone. Oh, you're a little bit less than half a person. So you have $500.
Like the 3/4 rule.
And we'll cite you, and then you might get you. They also have to deal with now, if they violate the rule and the cops come knocking on the door, then they got to deal with ICE.
Right.
So no one's really thinking about, like, how does this impact some of our most vulnerable communities?
Exactly. And killing small businesses is the worst possible thing for minority businesses, minority communities, to get them out of intergenerational poverty.
Absolutely. No more. Out here in LA, you see vendors on the street all the time, street vendors. A lot of them are undocumented, and they come here and they freaking hustle. You know, it's like Schrodinger's immigrant. They're simultaneously too late to work and stealing our jobs.
Right.
But I see them out there working their butts off, selling street corn, candy, whatever.
Oh, yeah. I come from South Florida. I'm familiar with the Cuban community. You will never find harder workers than that.
Right. Well, now they're all just, I guess, trapped in their apartments with their families, and most of them live packed in there pretty well. Doesn't really sound like a great, a healthy alternative. Everyone, you know, 6 to 8 people crammed in a 2-bedroom house. You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. It's unreasonable, and it's unsustainable. We need to
it's unconscionable.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I think we're both getting a bit tired. So this has been fascinating, and I really liked that we got some interaction. So I'll let you know how it goes when I finally, you know, decide to stir the pot. But I have to tell you, to me, one of the best things that came out of this is I got to know you so much better. And we have a lot in common. We really do. So I hope that even after this, we continue the friendship, because I think you're fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on. And I think you're great. And I really appreciate you, as usual, taking a strong principled approach on this, even though everyone else is a little bit scaredy cat.
All right. So thank you so much. Have an awesome night, everyone. And we'll be getting this up on the Big L podcast. Good night. Bye-bye.